So in this video I'm first going to analyse Antoine Semenyo both statistically and from the eye test, before breaking down my somewhat outside of the box tactical idea that I think could improve United's ability to progress the ball forward from the defensive to the middle third in the build-up phase and create a 4v3 advantage when driving the ball forward into the final third. So Antoine Semenyo, how good is he and what type of skill set does he have? Well, Semenyo was 25 at the start of the year and he is what you would call a late bloomer. He was playing championship football with Bristol City until January 2023 when Bournemouth signed him as a 23-year-old for £10 million. But over the past 18 months, I think he's shown that just because a player is playing in the championship, approaching his mid-20s, doesn't mean they aren't capable of developing into better players than some of the younger players playing for top sides, especially when they have a skill set as unique, valuable and crucially mouldable as Semenyo's. But before I go any further, if you want to check out any cheap, good quality football jerseys, go over to jerseyfifa.co. They've got a variety of different current season and retro jerseys, including this 2006-2007 white Manchester United away shirt with Ronaldo 7 on the back, which they did actually send me, as well as this Juventus Zidane shirt from the 90s as well, which are two jerseys that I have been wanting for quite a while, but were incredibly hard to find. If you use code Atlantis at checkout, you'll get a 10% discount, so I'll leave it linked in the description and in the comments section below. So why do I describe Semenyo's skill set as unique, valuable and mouldable? And what is the relevance of this to the wingback roles in Amorim's system? Well, the reason I say unique and valuable is because it's quite rare for a player to have such a complete skill set as a winger, whilst also having the quality and end product in the final third that Semenyo has. See, from an offensive point of view, Antoine Semenyo has exactly what you'd want from one of your wide players: pace and power combined with close ball control and fluidity in his movement even when running with the ball at speed. He's incredibly explosive off the mark, able to receive possession with his back to goal, feint one way before dropping a shoulder and powerfully driving into space in the other direction. But what really impresses me with his game is that Semenyo is capable of driving down the outside of the defender or spinning on the inside before driving the ball powerfully through central areas, and I'm going to explain the tactical reason why this is so important later on in the video. See, as a ball carrier and dribbler, Semenyo is a very reliable source of ball progression, as seen by his FBref report in the Premier League this season, where he ranks around the low to mid 80th percentiles for both his take-ons and the percentage of take-ons he completes, as well as for his carries into the penalty area as well. However, unlike a lot of wide attackers who are very good ball carriers and dribblers from a young age, but don't develop other parts of their game, which is the case with someone like Garnacho at this early point in his career, Semenyo instead is a lot more complete and does a lot of things very well. When he receives the ball in the final third and is able to isolate a fullback in a 1v1, he doesn't have the flair or the trickery of a Doku, Savinho or a Nico Williams, but what he does have is very good decision making and technique. When he's dribbling or carrying the ball around the box, unlike Garnacho or Martinelli, he constantly has his head up, allowing him to see options around him, but also see where potential runs are occurring, which alongside him not overcomplicating his game, leads to him being very good when it comes to picking out players inside of the box with low crosses across the 6-yard box, or finding players with cutbacks to the edge of the box or to the penalty spot. Now, whilst he does have a very complete skill set with other mouldable elements of his game, being something I'm going to discuss in just a minute, he does need to improve the passing side of his game. From a statistical point of view, he ranks below average when compared against other Premier League wingers and attacking midfielders for most of his creative and progressive passing metrics, not quite having the ability to see and thread passes from deeper and central areas at this point in his career, but he isn't a playmaker, he's definitely more of a winger. And even still, you could argue that ranking around the 45th to 50th percentile range for his progressive passes and his passes into the final third does suggest that in a more possession dominant side, which United do hope to be next season, alongside a steady improvement over the coming months and years, we can start to see these metrics move from below average to around the 60th to 70th percentile range, and even higher when compared against wingbacks and fullbacks. However, this is where we come on to the attributes in Semenyo's skill set that are the reason I describe him as mouldable. But before I get into that, a quick 10-second reminder: I have got my Manchester United 2025 transfer plan draft notes on my Patreon. You can sign up for a 7-day free trial just to see it. I'll leave it linked in the eye above, description, comment section and on the end screen after the video. So alongside his explosive pace, power, dribbling and ball carrying ability, Semenyo is also a composed and accurate shooter in and around the box, with him also being very good on his weaker foot, which means that he has a variety of different finishes in his locker, from low driven shots, drilled hard across the goalkeeper into the far corner from either side foot finishes with accurate placement, or more explosive strikes looking to beat the goalkeeper with power over placement. And so this makes Semenyo a significant goal scoring threat, which is reflected in the fact that this season he's picked up 9 goals in 35 Premier League games, beating last season's solid output of 8 goals in 33 games, with his non-penalty goals this season ranking in the 67th percentile and his non-penalty XG in the 75th percentile, which this season he only underperforms by 0.01 per 90, and last season he overperformed by 0.14 per 90. Add on to this his impressive aerial ability, which sees him rank in the 85th to 90th percentile range for both the amount and the percentage of aerial duels he is winning, alongside his physicality, athleticism, defensive qualities and positional understanding makes him the sort of player who I'd compare to someone like Denzel Dumfries. Now, not in terms of being stylistically similar to him, with one being a winger and the other closer to a fullback, but in how they can be used as tactical weapons from the wing-back positions, utilising their goal scoring and their aerial ability, which I may cover in a future video, so if you are interested in Semenyo, let me know in the comment section below. But this brings me on to how Semenyo and Amad can be used tactically in Ruben Amorim's 3-4-3. So in those wing-back roles, I've been saying since Amorim came in that United need players who have a skill set of a winger rather than a fullback or even a wing-back, which was the main reason for my criticism of the Dorgu transfer for that amount of money in January, as well as why I think we should probably cash in on Dalot either this summer or next. See, if you are using a back 3 or back 5 system, whatever you want to call it, the offensive output depends a lot on what type of players you use in those wing-back roles, and it's fairly simple to understand why this is the case. See, when Amorim was using Dalot and Dorgu in the wing-back roles, you've effectively got 5 defenders on the pitch, reducing the overall individual offensive output of your 10 outfield players, which with a double pivot of 2 industrious ball winners like Agate and Casemiro, even though Casemiro does have random performances where he looks like a creative deeper line playmaker, you now have 3 centre-backs, 2 defensive-minded midfielders and 2 fairly defensive wing-backs, which now makes you heavily reliant on the front 3 for the offensive output in the final third. However, by using 2 natural wide attackers at wing-back like Semenyo and Amad, you now have 2 extra offensively minded players in possession, which the majority of the time is going to be 1 more than you would have in the majority of back 4 systems. And you can see this clearly from a statistical point of view. Amad ranks in the 83rd percentile for his non-penalty goals, with 0.38 per 90 this season in the Premier League, with an overperformance of 0.16 per 90, with Semenyo ranking in the 67th percentile with 0.27 per 90, and only slightly underperforming his XG. In contrast, Dorgu in the 3,187 minutes that he's played in the last 365 days, even though he was playing often as a winger for Lecce, he records just 0.08 per 90, with an XG underperformance of 0.06, whilst Dalot in the Premier League, despite ranking fairly highly when being compared against other fullbacks, he records 0.09 per 90, throwing each duo's chance creating, progressive passing, ball carrying and dribbling metrics, and it's clearly you have a significant improvement for offensive output, particularly in the final third, with 2 natural attackers like Semenyo and Amad, compared with using fullbacks like Dorgu and Dalot in those wing-back roles. But this brings us on to the question of how Ruben Amorim can use Semenyo and Amad tactically to improve United's possession system. Well, as I said before, I may do a separate video with more detailed tactical analysis and ideas for this, including an interesting comparison between Denzel Dumfries and Semenyo. So if you do want to see that, let me know in the comments, and remember to check the channel for that video. But for this particular video, I'm just going to focus on one pattern of play. So with Semenyo and Amad at wing back, I think you could look to use their ball carrying ability to progress the ball through the centre, into the middle and final thirds. However, Amorim would need to incorporate new patterns of play into his possession system, and this is how I would do it. So in the build-up phase, United used what is essentially a 3-5-2-1 shape, with the central centre-back and midfield double pivot sitting close to the edge of the box, and the interior forward starting in these narrow and deep positions. Now, from a goal kick situation, when the opposition is going to look to man-to-man press us aggressively in our defensive third, we can look to use coordinated movements in order to manipulate space centrally for Semenyo and Amad to take advantage of, and you can do this by having the midfield double pivot starting slightly higher than the central centre-back back, but then dropping deep towards the ball when the ball becomes active, with the intention of dragging the opposition's midfield line as high as possible, which combined with the interior forwards starting narrow and deep, and then spinning on the outside of the fullback on their back, pushing them deeper and wider, works to stretch the opposition's midfield and defensive lines, opening up space in the middle third. Now from here you can then look to work the ball into a position where one of your deeper players has a passing lane open to split the opposition's midfield and front line press, with the double pivot and central centre back making horizontal movements in order to manipulate the positioning of the midfield line, creating space between the players, which combined with Amad and Semenyo starting wide and deep, and then looking to make a diagonal run off of the back of the opposition's wide midfielder, who when the ball is on the other side of the box is likely going to be holding a narrow position. This can then work to open up a passing lane for United to progress the ball in behind the opposition's press, finding Amad or Semenyo as a free man in behind the opposition's midfield line, wherefrom they can now turn with the ball and use their explosive ball carrying ability to drive the ball through the space in the middle third, setting up an artificial counter-attack where Semenyo and Amad are the ones driving the attack forward through the centre of the pitch, potentially a 4v3 advantage if the opposition has gone man for man, with one of the front three dropping off to open up a passing lane for a short pass, simultaneously dragging a defender high, opening up space for the other two to make penetrating runs in behind the back line. And this is just one pattern of play that I think could improve United in the build-up phase, and I'll come on to some others if you do want to see that other Semenyo tactical video. But in conclusion, should Manchester United sign Antoine Semenyo? Well, if we factor out the cost of the transfer fee for the moment, I think Semenyo is exactly the type of signing that Amorim's system needs, a versatile winger who has a skill set to be able to play from either flank, either in the front three or at wing back, who also has the pace, power and ball carrying ability that United have been lacking, which alongside his aerial ability, defensive qualities and his overall goal scoring threat in the final third makes him the perfect stylistic fit to improve Ruben Amorim's system offensively. At 25, his age profile is perfect, as are the other factors like him being homegrown and Premier League proven. The only potential issue is the price that Bournemouth would demand, especially with how good he and the team overall have been this season, alongside them potentially not having to sell players due to other players like Kerkez and Huijsen who could be sold for significant fees. Now obviously, to give a concrete answer I would have to go through who else I would sign to see if the budget was there, but I am going to cover that in a separate video, and as I said before, my transfer plan is on my Patreon currently. But recently a figure between 50 to 60 million pounds has been reported, which I think is far too much. 35 million pounds a definite yes. 40 million pounds is probably what I think his value should be, maximum 45 million, which even then is very expensive and is making me have second thoughts, but definitely nothing over that. So whilst I would love United to sign Semenyo, and I do think we could potentially get Bournemouth to agree a deal for lower than their initial asking price for the sort of fee it would cost and the other areas that United need to strengthen, this summer I could only see it being viable if Bruno Fernandes was to be sold for upwards of 120 million pounds. So let me know what you think of Semenyo in the comment section below, and if you want to check out any cheap, good quality football jerseys, go over to jerseyfifa.co. You can use code Atlantis at checkout for a 10% discount. I'll leave it linked in the description and in the comment section below, and if you want to sign up to my Patreon, you can get a 7-day free trial to see my transfer plan. I'll leave that linked on the end screen now as well.